Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Viterbi Live. This is our special Viterbi Live broadcast for transfer applicants. If you are thinking about applying as a transfer student to the USC Viterbi School of Engineering for the upcoming fall 2015 semester, we are here and ready to answer your questions. First, let's do some introductions from us and welcome all of you that are out there watching. My name is Paul Ledesma. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Admission here for the Viterbi School, and I also have some of my colleagues joining me.
I'm Christine Shea. I'm the Associate Director of Undergraduate Admission here.
And I'm Matthew O'Prime. I'm the Associate Dean for Admission with the Viterbi School.
Cool. So to get us started off, first off, if you're here at our website, viterbinotes.usc.edu/live, you can see that there is a form directly beneath the live broadcast there. If you have questions, just go ahead and fill that form out. We already have a number of really great questions that have already been submitted. I know there's no way we're going to get to all of them, or we're going to do our best. Some of them are repeated, and so we're going to do our best to make them as general as possible and help you out and get some great questions, or get some great answers to you. And we'll be going live for about an hour now. I'd like to start off just give you a brief overview on the Viterbi School and how we run our programs here, and also Christine will give you a brief introduction to the ideas of transferring that will probably answer a good number of your questions as well. The Viterbi School here is one of the largest academic programs at the university. We are an engineering school that has a very broad set of disciplines. We offer about 10 different types of engineering disciplines here with over 30 unique undergraduate bachelor's degrees. Our programs are designed so that you will get right into engineering and really work on a balanced curriculum of theory versus hands-on. As a transfer student, we're hoping that you're taking the appropriate courses that Christine's going to talk about so that you can jump in right away into those engineering courses. And we want to work with you as quickly and early as possible in your transfer process to help you understand what it's like, what types of courses you need to take at your particular institution so you can minimize your time here and really just be as efficient as possible. The program is designed for you to complete it as quickly as possible. We're a private institution. We have small classes. We're focused on your success, so it is very different than a lot of other institutions that you might be coming from. Christine, you want to highlight just a couple quick ideas about the transfer process?
Yeah, absolutely. So, to prepare to transfer to the engineering school here at USC, there's some key courses of preparation that we want to see. So we recommend that students who are applying to USC as engineering students have Calculus 2 semesters of a lab-based science. When possible, you should get that USC writing requirement done, and overall have 30 units. The key course to have in play by this spring semester is really to have that exposure to Calculus 2 in progress. So we really like to see that with our transfer applicants. And then everything else kind of falls into place in terms of general education. You're not required to complete general education courses prior to transfer, but we certainly say it makes sense to make good progress on it prior to transfer, just so that you can get them out of the way before you get here.
Great, thank you. So let's just jump into the questions. One of our first questions was submitted very early on. John asked the question, which I think is really helpful to round out the application process a little bit, which is what is the earliest date students will receive a decision? I've heard some students are notified before June 1st. Christine, do you want to walk us through the timeline here and how different people may receive decisions on different dates based on what they've been doing?
Yeah, sure. So the application deadline is February 1st. So if you're interested in fall 2015 admission, you want to get your application in by February 1st. And then most students are going to hear back from the university by June 1st. So I always tell students, expect during that first week of June. That's probably when you're going to hear back. Every now and again, you may hear from a handful of students, typically from other departments, non-engineering major students, might have heard back sooner. But with our engineering population, you can really expect June 1st to hear back from the university. And what you will be hearing back is either an admission decision, so a yes or a no, or you're going to be requested to submit spring grades. And we've had a number of students who've called or emailed the office asking about, when will they be asked to submit their spring grades. If we want your spring grades, we will ask for them. So that's something that will happen in June if we need them.
All right. Very cool. There are a few different questions here regarding letters of recommendation and also some supplemental information. Like, for example, Felipe sent in a question. Felipe, thanks for asking. What's the deadline for my recommenders to send my letters of recommendation? And do I have to have my official transcripts in before the February 1st deadline? There's a few others that have asked very similar questions, which is, hey, the deadline's this, but what if people send it at different times? How do we treat those deadlines, and how do we help them understand what needs to get actually clicked, what needs to get in by February 1st?
Yeah, it's Matt. Do you want to grab part of this question?
Sure. I can talk about this part. So the application deadline is February 1st, and for that, what we mean by the deadline is that's when you have to turn in your stuff. So that means that's when you have to submit the common application and the USC supplement and turn in the things that can be turned in at that point. We are not going to hold you responsible for things that you're depending on other people for. So things like the letters of recommendation, official transcripts, we want you, and it's in your best interest, to initiate those requests and get those as soon as possible, and preferably right along with the rest of your application materials. But it's not like we're going to consider your application late if a letter of recommendation comes in a couple weeks later or something like that. What you need to know, though, is that we cannot complete the review of your application until we've got all of those required materials. So it is in your best interest to make the request for the transcripts and make the request for the recommendations as soon as possible, preferably even before that February 1st deadline, so that we get those materials. One other quick note, we can start the application review based on your unofficial transcripts. We will need your official transcripts at some point in this process, but we can do most of the application review based on your unofficials.
And I actually should have added to the timeline what we're doing between February 1st and June 1st, because I know that seems like a really long time. One of the first things that we're doing as an admission office, working closely with the University Admission Office, we're going through your application and seeing if it's complete or not. So if it's not complete, don't feel like, if you don't get it all done by February 1st, it's kind of a one-shot deal. What we do is we go through, if there's anything missing, we then as a university will contact you and say, hey, thanks for submitting your application. Now we need these additional documents to complete the review of your application. So things like official transcripts. Letters of recommendation are not required to apply to the Viterbi school, and I know that the Common App asks you for someone's recommender's name. If that recommender never gets back to us, to the university, that's fine. We're not going to consider your file incomplete. But yeah, that first sweep that we do, starting after the application deadline, is just to make sure everything's in the file. And if it's not, don't worry, we're going to let you know.
Great. So you actually read my mind, Christine. There was a question from Andrew about how important are the letters of recommendation. So just to reiterate, Andrew, you asked that question. Letters of recommendation are not required. We're not necessarily looking at that. It's much more important to be understanding your coursework that you've taken and how successful you've been in that coursework, so we can adequately understand your preparation and figure out whether this is something that you're able to do in jumping into the USC program. All right, so let's talk a little bit about there's a lot of questions about the application process. And there's a question here about Transfer Day that's coming up. So I want to have Christine talk a little bit about what's coming up on Transfer Day, how Transfer Day works, and whether there's anything that goes on as special. Emmanuel asked this question specifically. Will there be a Viterbi representative there, and should I bring anything specifically to the Transfer Day program?
Yeah, so great. So Transfer Day, we're having our last one of this year coming up this Friday. So Transfer Day, if you've signed up, fantastic. If you're an engineering student, you are going to meet with me in the engineering school. So I'll be running a presentation and just going over a lot of the similar things that honestly we're talking about now, but probably in a more formal presentation setting. You do not need to bring anything. This is just bring your questions if you have any. But this is really just an opportunity for you to get to know us at the Viterbi Admission Office and learn more about the school. For those of you who aren't local to USC, don't worry. One of the reasons we're having this live chat is so that we can answer questions for people who may not be able to attend Transfer Day, and we get that.
Great, thank you. So another quick question about the transferability of things that's coming up. There's a lot of questions regarding courses, and so to try to make this as specific, well, to make this as general to help all of you, Most of your questions are very specific about your very specific classes and whether they will transfer and what types of credit you'll receive, and also how your grades are versus whether they'll come across. And so if we could talk a little bit more specifically about how a student can understand specifically their situation, what types of courses transfer across, and maybe we can give some very specific websites so they can understand the process of articulation histories, articulation guides, and also how sometimes it's always not going to be a guarantee, but we can do some really good advice.
Do you want to start with the website, Christine, or do you want me to talk about...
Why don't you go ahead and start chatting a little bit, and then I can pull up the website.
Okay, so Christine is going to get the specific website where if you are attending a California community college or one of a handful of generally California four-year institutions where we have a formal articulation agreement, as well as a website where you can look up some of the histories of articulation histories or courses that have been transferred from various institutions around the country to USC in the past. So you'll be able to look up some of your very specific things. But in general, if you're attending an accredited institution, if it's a domestic institution, it needs to be one of the regionally accredited institutions, which is most colleges and universities in the U.S. And if it's an international institution, it needs to be accredited or recognized by the local Ministry of Education or the equivalent kind of governmental organization. But if it's an accredited institution and it's coursework that will count towards a degree at that institution, then it's very likely to transfer to USC. Now, there are differences in content that's covered, so I'll get to that in a second. And there are definitely differences in units awarded between semester institutions and quarter institutions. But in general, if you're taking courses that count for a degree at an accredited institution, then some of those units are going to transfer. And now, in terms of transferring those courses and actually having them count towards your engineering degree here at USC, so most commonly the question here would be something like your math or your science or any pre-engineering coursework that you might have done, or statics or things like that. Again, in general, if the course is transferring or transferable, then the question is just, is the same content covered as the requirement here? And for some of the disciplines like math, it generally is. You know, Calculus 1 is Calculus 1 here, it's Calculus 1 at other institutions, it's Calculus 1 anywhere. So if you've taken Calculus 1, then it's likely going to count as Calculus 1. Same thing with Calculus 2. Same thing with intro chemistry, intro programming, but it starts to vary on, in things like computer science, which kind of programming or which kind of languages, and in things like physics is usually quite complicated because different institutions teach the various topics of physics in different orders. And so sometimes you need to have completed a physics sequence at your first institution for it to count for all of the physics courses here. Christine, do you want to talk a little bit about how to look up the articulation histories?
Yeah, great. So actually on the Viterbi website, so if you visit viterbi.usc.edu/transfer, there's a link that says transferable coursework. So if you head on over there, what you'll actually find are links to some of the resources that Matthew and Paul were referencing. So we have articulation agreements. So for those of you attending California community colleges, this is your primary resource where the articulation agreement basically outlines precisely which courses from your community college will transfer to USC for credit. And it will show you, okay, if you're at SMC taking math, now I've got myself in a corner because I'm going to make up the math number, but let's just say math 8, it's equivalent to this course here at USC. So we'll tell you very specifically that. I know some of you are coming from four-year institutions or institutions outside of California, and your best resource is to then go ahead and use the articulation history. Articulation histories list every single course that has transferred to USC for credit in the past, but it's based on if we've had students come from that school. So if we haven't had a ton of students come from your given school, we might not have a ton of information, but that's where you can always email us and ask us, well, do you think this physics course makes sense? And we can give you our very educated guesses. They're still guesses, but they're very educated guesses about, yes, we think this course is more likely to transfer than not. So those are two good pieces. And finally, there is one other resource for students who are primarily at California community colleges, and that's the Transfer Planning Guide. If you're familiar with assist.org, this is very similar, where you can put in that you attend, let's say, Saddleback College, and that you're interested in computer science with an emphasis in games. And that will show you every single course based on your major in your school that will transfer to credit to USC. It is important to note, though, about both the Articulation Agreement and the Transfer Planning Guide, you are not required to complete all the courses that come up on that list. I have a lot of students who email or call Paul, me, Becky, or Matt saying, I wanted to transfer, but I'm not done yet. And then when we talk to you guys a little bit more, we realize you've done the calculus too. You were under the impression that you must do Calc 3 or you must do linear algebra before you can apply. And really always remember to look at transferable coursework in the framework of our recommendations, which is please have Calculus 2, 2 semesters of lab science, the writing, and overall have 30 units. That's kind of the key framework that you want to look at.
Yeah, so if I could jump in here, hopefully you all can see my screen right now. This is the website that Christine was talking about, viterbi.usc.edu/transfer. As you can tell, there's a lot of information here. Our most recent blog posts always are coming across the slide here. And on the left, you can see some of the links that Christine was talking about. So when you click on Preparing to Transfer, you can read a little bit more in general about our admission criteria and our recommended courses that we're looking at, which are the up to 2 semesters of calculus and the lab-based science, etc. And as you move along through our website, which I encourage you to read entirely, you can see the transferable coursework. And these are the links that Christine was talking about. You have the links here for the articulation agreements, the transfer planning guide, and also the articulation history. So you can see exactly those classes. So these are all right here at viterbi.usc.edu/transfer. Some really helpful information. It's fairly straightforward, and it works out quite well for everybody there. So,
I did want to just go back to something that Christine mentioned, because it was something that I wanted to make sure that we were pretty clear about. You get a lot of confusion about, have I taken enough units? Have I taken all the classes? Have I taken too many classes? We understand that there are a number of institutions out there that have very, very strict and very, very specific rules about you have to take exactly the right things, and you can't take too much more than the right things, and you can't apply until you've earned a certain number of units, and it has to be precisely the right. None of that is true at USC. We're going to be looking at the totality of your application, all of your college level coursework, and we're going to be judging and making the admission decisions based on our best evaluation of what you've got there. We don't have these sort of hard cutoffs about when you're eligible to apply. So if you have any question about, am I ready to apply, my recommendation is definitely reach out to us, email us, call us, and we can go over what you've done and help you figure out when the best time to apply is. But it's usually a lot sooner than most students assume because of those rules at some other institutions.
And if I can jump in as well, we've been receiving a lot of phone calls over the last week as you're all preparing to submit your final application. And when you call in, just go ahead and have your questions ready. We're ready to talk to you whenever you call, and you can ask to talk to any one of our admission counselors, myself, Christine, Becky, who's not on our live chat right now, or if Matthew's available. One of us at least tends to be here at all times. Our office is open 8:30 to 5. If you call in, you're able to catch us. Just go ahead and ask your questions right then. We've been getting a lot of requests for appointments, and you don't need one. You don't need to call to set up an appointment days later. You do not need to come in person. You can just call us, or maybe email us a transcript with specific questions we can get back to. It'd be far more efficient, and then you're not waiting. If we're not around, we do recommend leaving a voicemail with your contact information so that we can get back to you. There's been a lot of phone calls lately with no voicemails left. You're just delaying our opportunity to help you. So please just go ahead and give us a call, and we'll help you out as quick as we can. Our job is to help you as best we possibly can. We're not trying to stand in the way in any particular sense. So first, quick, Nathan, I see that you've asked the same question 3 different times. and I appreciate that. We're going to get, it's a great question. I want to get to that, but I want to get through some of this more application processing stuff in the first part of our chat, and then towards the second half I want to get to more of what happens here at the Viterbi School. So I really appreciate your question. I will get back to you, Nathan, I promise. But more continuing on with the articulation stuff, there's a great question here about I get see from Jorge. Christine, you want to give a quick comment about I get see? What does I get see mean to USC?
Nothing. USC does not follow I get see. So, and honestly, if you're following I get see and you're an engineering student, typically that's kind of not getting you on the right path. But talk with the appropriate schools about that. But USC does not follow I get see. In terms of general, I get see is usually a general education pattern. For USC, remember, we don't require completion of USC's general education courses prior to transfer. It usually makes good sense to get some of them done before you transfer, but it's not a requirement. And we have our own distinct GE pattern outside of I get see. That said, if you look over I get see and USC's GE pattern, usually there's some overlap. So I always encourage students, look at, if you're following I get see and you want to get some of those courses done and you want to apply to USC and get GE done for us as well, then just look for that overlap, because there usually is a fair amount of overlap that you can identify, so that you don't have to take one course for one school and one course for USC. It can just be the same thing.
Great. We have another great question here, two actually. Annie and also Lionel asked questions about an associate's degree, and is an associate's degree recommended before applying? Or how does associate's degree factor into this whole transfer process? And then if I can add a third part of that question, because this is built into that as well, what if I don't do any of the things that you told me to do, but I still have an associate's degree? Does that help me get admitted? So can we talk about what an associate's degree means, if anything, to our admission process?
Well, again, we don't have that sort of you must have completed a certain number of units, or you must have completed your associate's degree before you can apply. That's simply just not a requirement. Our primary concern when students are applying to transfer into our engineering programs here are quite simply, have you taken the right courses to be prepared to be successful in our program? And quite often, things like the I get see requirements are much broader than the USC GE requirements. So is it a good thing that you've taken I get see courses? Is it a good thing that you've gone all the way through completing your associate's degree? Sure, we like to see you doing good academic work at the college level, but in terms of directly impacting your chances of getting in or what we're looking for in the application review, we're going to be far more primarily focused on your overall academic performance, and have you been taking the courses that will prepare you for your intended major in engineering here at USC. So to shortly answer the associate's degree question, it's great. If you're in a position where you're planning on finishing your associate's degree before transferring, go for it. Just know that it's not necessary in order to apply to USC for engineering.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with what's required of every associate's degree from different schools, but I did talk to a student who was working on an engineering associate's degree, and she was very surprised that all the courses that she was taking for the associates in engineering for this degree didn't overlap with anything that we were asking for in terms of the higher level math and things like that. So just make sure, as long as if you can fit it into your schedule, great, but you do want to focus on taking the math and science courses, Calculus 2, 2 semesters of lab-based science.
The ones that we're asking for.
Pardon me?
The ones that we're asking for, not like
right, the ones we're asking for as the Viterbi school versus what the associate's degree might be asking.
Yeah, and if I can add on to that, there's some other questions from students in our chat right now that are discussing their ability to transfer from a four-year institution, and they might be following a very specific degree or curriculum plan at their four-year institution for either a degree in maybe a science like physics or an actual engineering degree. And if you're interested in transferring to the Viterbi school, we have very specific things that may not line up with what that school is offering. So we're not telling you. We are trying to understand the classes and to understand your ability to get into our program, which may be different than the program that you're in. So you have to kind of see where you can balance that out across the two different sets of requirements if you're not 100% dead set on transferring to USC. This is a great question from Kevin. As a military veteran, he intends to utilize the GI Bill. And since we're a private institution, can we discuss how the GI Bill and the Yellow Ribbon Program affect veteran tuition? Matthew, you want to discuss where we can possibly direct him or any information we can help him on this?
Yeah, absolutely. USC was actually one of the original Yellow Ribbon schools, so we have a very active Yellow Ribbon program. And then in terms of finding out more about that, as well as sort of GI Bill and other veteran benefits in general, all of those benefits are coordinated through our financial aid office in conjunction with various government agencies that help administer those programs. So the best thing to do as you're making plans about transitioning those benefits to USC or applying to those benefits to USC in the first place is simply make contact with our financial aid office here at USC. And I believe we have both links and phone information, again, on that same website that Paul was showing before in terms of being able to get in contact with the financial aid office.
Great. Thank you so much.
Actually, can I add just one more quick thing?
I guess. You already interrupted, so go ahead.
There is an additional program that was funded by a very generous donor and alumni here at USC called the Schoen Family Scholarships. These are dedicated scholarships that are only for veterans with certain amounts of active duty and honorable discharge and a couple of other requirements. We do have information about that up on the website, but you can also reach out to us. That's not really a GI benefits thing, but it is a scholarship that is targeted for USC students who are studying either business or engineering here at USC, and it's definitely worth finding out more about if you think you might qualify for it.
Absolutely. Some really strong programs for veterans here at USC and some really, really cool things. So Kevin, check that out, and anyone else that might be a veteran, make sure that you're working with the appropriate offices. We have a few questions here. Christine, I'm going to have you jump in regarding 3.2. And so if you could, for most of the people in the audience have no idea what 3.2 is, so we can help them understand what it is and how it applies to a very small set of students at very particular institutions. But we got Jenna from UPS, we got Rachel from Whittier, we got Nathan at Gordon. They're all chiming in right now and asking questions. But one of the questions that I think is somewhat appropriate is how are transfer applications viewed when you're in the 3.2 program versus all those things we're talking about with the requirements? Is there anything different that they need to know, and how can we help them tonight?
Yeah, great. So the 3.2 program, just to give a little background, is a very specific program that we have with other four-year institutions. These are partner schools that we've already established agreements with. And so students who are in the 3.2 program start as freshmen. So most students, if you're at a community college or another four-year institution, you're probably not in this program. You would have known about it going into your freshman year at schools like Biola, UPS, Whittier, etc. These are small liberal arts schools that we tend to partner with that do not offer engineering. So for students at those partner schools, as you know, yeah, our recommendations are different. In fact, our expectations are a little bit higher for you in terms of the coursework we want you to get done over 3 years at your partner school. So Calc 2 isn't enough. You're going to have to go for 3.2 students. We want to see that you finish your math sequence, that you finish the science sequence, and that you do complete all the general education courses prior to transfer to USC as a 3.2 student. Again, that's just for 3.2 students. All the rest of the students who are not 3.2 students, live in the bubble of Calc 2 semesters of lab-based science. But our 3.2 students, yes, there are key courses that we want to see that you've had exposure to. If you're not sure exactly what courses those are at your partner school, shoot us an email. We can walk you through that, based on your major and different things like that, what courses you should be taking.
Great.
If I can just add one thing, the point I'd like to be sure people are clear about with the 3.2 programs is it's a very structured program. It's a very specific set of agreements with a very small and specific set of liberal arts schools where engineering is not an option. And the basic format of that agreement is you have to complete all of the specific requirements at the first institution and then complete all of the engineering requirements here for it to be an official actual 3.2 program. So those are all structured agreements. There's a teaching coordinator at your school, and you can always get in contact with us, and we can go over that specific agreement with your individual school.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about scholarships. There's a few questions about scholarships and how students can be considered for scholarships. How are they considered? What happens in the scholarship process? And what are the other types of scholarships that maybe some of our transfer students might want to look into that would require, additional applications that maybe are USC or non-USC related?
Yeah, so I can tackle the merit-based scholarship piece. It's really easy to be considered for merit-based scholarships at USC. All you have to do is submit your application by February 1st. That includes the common application and the USC writing supplement. You get those pieces in by February 1st, you're automatically going to be considered for merit-based scholarships. There's no essay, there's no box you need to check. Literally just get your application in. So what you're hopefully planning on doing already, which was meeting the deadline, what we've rolled into that process too is automatic consideration for merit-based scholarships. And so that makes it pretty easy to be considered for those scholarships. And then in terms of other scholarships, I always encourage students to check out the financial aid website because they have a full listing of every single scholarship that through USC that is offered, and you can go through and see if there are different deadlines or different application processes. And I'm sure I'm forgetting a few other scholarships. Matt, what else might I be missing?
Well, no, that's exactly the right advice. Is the university USC source merit-based scholarship system does not require additional applications by itself. So we'll automatically consider people who apply by the deadline for the university-wide merit scholarships. There are some other smaller targeted scholarships, and Paul is pulling up the links on the website from the financial aid office. So you can go there and you can see some of the other smaller scholarships or special scholarships that are available for students who are applying to USC as a whole.
Right. So as you're talking, Matt, I don't want to interrupt you, so I'll let you go. I'll let you keep talking. Well, I've overlaid the website on top of all of our video.
Okay.
So the financial aid website, usc.edu/financial aid, has a lot of great information that everyone should be looking at, regardless of where you're coming from, what you're doing. Need-based financial aid, including scholarships. So the ideas of applying for financial aid, I would like Matt or Christine to talk about in just a second with need-based. But first, there's a link up here called Grants and Scholarships. When you click on that, and over on the left here, you can click on the undergraduate grants. You can read a little bit more about how scholarships work, how it all kind of carries through. You can see specifically the USC scholarships that are outlined for the overall university, and there is a list of scholarship programs that gives you an entire list of all the different scholarships available for the academic year of 2015-2016. And if anyone might be available. Now, you need to look here to the Open To column, and you'll see that there are Open To transfer students, and there are ones that list specifically for transfer students and ones that include current students and transfer students. Some of them are culturally related, some of them are related to just individual backgrounds that you may have. So you want to check that out. It's on the usc.edu/financial aid. You can read a little bit more about it and get that information about that. Plus, there are outside scholarships, which are not related to USC, and there are a few things here for ROTC information for the military focused students, and also free scholarship searches that we link off to a number of different great resources that you can find on our website. So I want to talk about the applying for need-based aid.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first things you should do after you've submitted your common application, USC writing supplement, and you complete your application, you want to be sure that the next step that you take, if you're eligible for financial aid, is to apply for financial aid. You're not required to do so for admission purposes. Sometimes we have students who say, I can't apply, or I'm not planning on it, will it hurt my chances of admission? Absolutely not. But what we want students to do is we don't want students to rule out need-based financial aid. Need-based financial aid is going to be based on what your need is as a family. So, what USC will do is if you submit the, let's say, the FAFSA and CSS profile, those are the two key pieces of information that you need in at the get-go. they will use that to kind of determine what your need is. And really, need-based financial aid from USC can make a dramatic difference in the cost of attending USC. And unfortunately, it's hard to tell you, how much aid you're going to get ahead of time necessarily without having the full, completing the full financial aid process. But it can make a significant difference. So that's why we always encourage students to engage in the need-based financial aid process.
Right. The FAFSA is something that some of you or most of you are probably already familiar with, but the CSS profile from collegeboard.com is something you may not be familiar with. It's something that USC requires. And for those of you that are California residents, you need to make sure that you read through the opportunities for a Cal Grant. And whether you're currently receiving the Cal Grant at your current institution or not receiving the Cal Grant, there are different instructions for all of that. And also, just a heads up, look forward to your tax return information for later on. So that'll help you understand how need-based financial aid works, and to reiterate what Christine was saying. Once you finish your application, that's your next step. You go straight on to working on the financial aid stuff. So now that the website's out of the way, let's get back to our questions. Let's get into a little bit of the student life here at USC. And Nathan, I promised I would get back to you, and so here you are. Nathan was asking about the teachers. Nathan is a student at Gordon, and so I know we've all three of us have visited Gordon in the past, and so we're familiar with that environment. But he has questions about how do they go about caring for their students, and is the student academic community he says more loving or more competitive. I'm going to throw in more collaborative or more competitive, because I can't claim whether a student community is more loving than competitive. I don't think that's the opposite. But collaborative or competitive, what are the faculty like? Do they care? What's it like here?
I actually think a great resource to get at the student perspective on this is the Viterbi Voices site that the student ambassadors have created. You want to show that? Pull up another website where you're talking. Just because I can sit here as the guy in the suit and talk about what it's like to be a student at USC, but at some point you really need to ask those questions and hear those answers and see those answers from actual real live current engineering students.
I have it up on the screen while you're talking. Just
great. In terms of do the faculty care, are they accessible, I'm pretty sure no one at any institution is quite as accessible and quite as awesome as Dr. Lee. But besides trying to raise to that bar,
Dr. Lee at Gordon is what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was specifically answering his question. But my understanding of our faculty and what I hear from the students is that the faculty are tremendously accessible here at USC. At a bare minimum, they actually teach the classes. This is not like other large research universities where sometimes the class is being taught by a graduate student or a PhD student, something like that. The faculty, one of the reasons you're considering coming to a place like USC is so that you can get to know and interact in these small class settings with the faculty who are actually teaching the classes. And as a bare minimum, all faculty who are teaching classes have to have open office hours where you can make an appointment or come in, depends on how they've set it up, and be able to interact one-on-one with your faculty member, ask your specific questions about that class, help with engineering in general, or even just start developing those mentoring relationships where they may be able to help guide you and make some choices about what you want to do in the future, what you're doing now, and how it leads to the future. So faculty are very accessible, and in my experience, they're actually pretty nice people. So it's definitely worthwhile taking advantage of that.
Yes, that website that we have up right now is viterbivoices.usc.edu. You can click around, read blogs, meet the students on their features category of their website. It's like a magazine. They're basically publishing really cool articles. And they have a series where they interview some of their favorite faculty members called Meet the Faculty. So you can watch all these different videos on Meet the Faculty from different departments and just learn about some of the stuff that they're doing. Watch those videos, interact with the students, ask them questions, get to know them a little bit more, find out what they think about this place as you read through their blogs. There's some really great information when it comes down to the types of things that they're doing. Plus, they are always linking off to some of their activities. I mean, they even have Spotify playlists. So you want to, if you like the same music as these students, that might help you understand whether it's a good place for you to.
The other part of Nathan's question, is it collaborative or more competitive? I think Matt already touched on that, but this is absolutely a collaborative work environment. We expect our students to work in groups and work with each other to be successful in their curriculum here. So I think you'll also see that when you visit Viterbi Voices, a lot of what the students are doing is working together on some tough projects and still having a good time. This is definitely, if you're comparing us with other four-year engineering programs, this is a definite collaborative work environment.
Okay, great. Back to the Common App. There's some questions here about the college report on whether that's required to submit the college report, and also how are high school transcripts factored in. What does it mean when high school transcripts are required for transfer student applicant? So can we talk about those two things?
Yeah, so the college report and all the other, I think there's another part of Common App that's called like additional forms. We don't need those. So I encourage you, Paul had the website earlier for our website, viterbi.usc.edu.
Do I have to get it up again? Is that what you're doing?
No.
Oh, yeah. I'm just going to try to incorporate a website in every answer that I give now.
Yeah. I think Paul can get the website up. But
if you go to viterbi.usc.edu/transfer, there's the How to Apply page. Read that through probably before you complete your application. It's going to list exactly what you need to submit. There's a transfer application checklist and things that you don't need to submit, like those additional forms, which we don't need. We don't need the midterm report or anything like that. So head on over to that website if you're unclear about anything, but we don't need those. There was a second part of that question as well, Paul. I forget what it was.
You're right. The question is whether I remember what the second part was. It was about high school transcripts.
Great. So you do need to submit a high school transcript that shows that you graduated high school or some sort of verification that you graduated or took some a high school equivalency test. That's what we're primarily interested in by seeing your high school transcript. Did you graduate? That's the key piece. As a transfer student, you're in college, so what we care most about isn't what you were doing in high school, whether you're a straight A student or something less than a straight A student. What we care most about is your most recent college level coursework. So that has the most weight. And I would say, just even going through your college career, I know there are some students who are very nervous because maybe they had a false start when they started college and they had a rough semester or two. And then they totally turned it around. And their grades are, not what they were before. They're really, really strong grades, but that first semester or two kind of haunts them. Keep in mind, again, this is a human process. There is no minimum GPA to apply to USC as a transfer student, and we're going to pay attention to more recent coursework to gauge if you're prepared to transfer into the program.
So Raina asked the question about GPA, which is what's the suggested GPA. So I think, Christine, you just handled that one, which is, do well, but we don't have a minimum, and you're going to be taking the right classes. Louis has another question about, has someone with a 3.4 GPA ever been admitted into Viterbi? Yes. I guess.
But we've also denied students higher than that.
I was going to say, and we've also had someone with a 3.4 GPA not admitted. I think that to really help you understand this, this is make a bold statement. Your GPA does not matter. It only matters what classes you've taken and how we can understand that GPA. You can have a 4.0 and be taking no math classes and no science classes, and we will not admit you. So your GPA, without understanding what class you've taken, does not matter. You got to be taking the right classes, which are the prep classes that we talked about at the beginning of the chat. If you haven't watched it, the recording for the chat will be up right after we're done here. You can go back and understand articulation histories and agreements and understand that you're taking the right classes for preparation, and are you doing well. A's and B's. A's and B's doing well, that's great. That's what we're looking for to really understand it. But it's not about GPA. There's not a minimum. There's not a suggested one. It's just, are you doing well, so we can understand that. What happens if you, Louis asked another question, if I have more than 64 transferable units, which ones do I report? How does this happen?
You report them. Yeah, go ahead, Matt,
Yeah,
please.
I was just going to say the quick answer to that is when you apply, we ask you and expect you to turn in your complete educational history, starting with that evidence of high school or an equivalent completion, and all college coursework at all institutions that you've taken since then. I loved Christine's phrase just now that this is a human process. We require that you turn in everything, and then we are going to read through it carefully. We're going to understand patterns and trends, and we're going to understand things like maybe a change in major where grades changed, or changes in institutions where grades changed. So you need to send us everything, and then we're going to be very careful about understanding the context of all of those things and making sure that we're making a comprehensive and fair decision. Does that answer the question?
I think so.
Okay.
Yes, we all agree.
Yes, nodding.
Let's move back. Sorry, I'm jumping around to a lot of different types of questions, trying to make sure we're covering all the certain elements. Oh, that was what it was. Trojan transfer plan. Charisse. Let's see if I can find it. Charisse asks a question about, I'm on the Trojan transfer plan, and are my requirements different than what you've been talking about? You mentioned science. Does that mean I have to take that? So can you clarify that transfer applicants to engineering still have to do all this regardless of what kind of plan they're on?
You just answered the question.
I know.
Maybe you could pull up the website, Paul, and just...
But yes, we concur with Paul. If you're applying to engineering, we need to see exposure to to calculus, sciences, those types of courses. Because as Paul was saying, you can have, let's say, even a 4.0 GPA, but if you don't have exposure to math and science courses, you're not giving us as the engineering department really anything to go on to determine what type of engineer you'll be here. And those math and science courses help us understand that. That's why we put such a strong emphasis on it. It helps us understand if you're going to be successful and graduate from our engineering program.
Yeah, I should clarify a little bit about the Trojan transfer plan.
Thank you.
When you met with the admission counselor and developed that Trojan transfer plan, one of the things that they should have talked to you about is if you're applying to engineering, that you need to take the appropriate preparation courses for engineering. That should already be part of that conversation that you had as part of setting up the Trojan transfer plan. And one of the other things is that Trojan transfer plan, unless you've specifically designed it around an application to engineering, those are plans that are designed to maximize your preparation and therefore potential eligibility for admission to USC, not necessarily to the specific engineering programs. That's why meeting with engineering is part of that setting up the Trojan transfer plan. That said, you don't need to panic if you've been following a transfer plan and you're worried that maybe you haven't been fully prepared for engineering. Reach out, get in contact with us. Call those phone numbers, go to the website that Paul will show you in a second, and reach out and talk to us, and we'll help you understand what kind of preparation you've got, and if you need other things in order to be eligible to transfer into engineering specifically.
Got it. Let's talk about this coming summer. There's a number of questions here. Dennis, Dylan, a few others. They're asking, if we get admitted, can we still take classes at our current institution this upcoming summer? That's question number one. Question number two is, if I am not going to be able to complete your prerequisites by this spring, can I complete them during summer and still be admitted?
Yeah, so let's talk about summer coursework. As going back to the timeline of admission, the university will get back to students by June 1st with either admission decisions or requests for spring grades. We don't get to evaluate summer coursework for admission purposes. You can, however, take courses during the summer and that will transfer to USC. So you're still welcome to do that if you're at a California community college and you want to knock out an additional general education course or maybe another math course and it's on the articulation agreement. Great, knock it out of the way. That's fantastic. But for students who are trying to use summer to catch up in the sense that they're not maybe hitting all of our recommendations, unfortunately we don't get to see those for review purposes because we've already made decisions by the time you're still in the class or you're just wrapping up the class. So if you're planning on taking summer coursework, I know there are some students who are saying, I'm still going to apply, that's fine, and you're going to have key coursework in the summer. You can let us know on the application that you're planning to do it, but we won't be able to actually see that grade in time for an admission decision. We'll have to move forward without it.
Cool. I just wanted to send a quick hello again to Nathan. Nathan, you're welcome. He said thank you for answering the question, so that was awesome on the form. And also Emmanuel hit us up on Twitter using hashtag ViterbiLive and said thank you for answering his question. So I think we've got some good fans out there so far, so that's good. The next question is from Jenna, and she's asking about 3.2. And I think that we can blow this out a little bit more, which is that are there a specified number of spots, it's in quotes, spots are in quotes, a specified number of spots set aside or a certain percentage of applicants selected for those in the 3.2 program, or does it differ with each year? Are we only going for a certain number of students every single year? Can we explain how that's relative to applicant pool, etc.?
Yeah, so for 3.2 students, there isn't a set number that we're going for. It tends to be such a small program in general. Having 4 students come from one school in a given year is huge. So it's a small program, so we don't have thresholds or cutoffs. Overall, 3.2 students are considered transfer students. So let's just talk about the transfer class that we bring in. We typically try to bring in a transfer class of 130, and so that's kind of what we're looking to bring in every year. And so we're not saving spots necessarily. We're looking to bring in students who will be successful in our program.
Great. And Charisse, you asked a follow-up question just right now. I'd like you to follow up with us via email or a phone call sometime tomorrow to discuss your particular courses, what you've been doing up to this point, and how we can further advise you a little more detailed on what classes you have planned. Okay, so Charisse, you can email us at viterbi.admission@usc.edu, and I think that's a good point for everybody. If we didn't get to your question, or if you have a more specific question that requires some of these we couldn't because they're just so specific, please follow up with us via email, viterbi.admission@usc.edu. Send us those questions. If you're asking us to understand what classes you've taken, do not give us just the names of the classes. That doesn't help us. Send us copies of transcripts or some sort of grade reports of all of your history so we can get a better understanding, because if you just tell us, well, I took these 2 calculus classes, our next question back to you is which ones, and you have to tell us exactly which ones so we can help better understand that.
And let us know what major you're thinking about, too. That's always helpful.
Thank you. Yes. What major you're planning on going into, because we need to evaluate what classes are required for everyone in this particular major. We don't want to advise you inappropriately. So with our last question, let's talk about the intangibles in the application process. There are a lot of questions here like, well, if I have an internship, will that help? Or what if I did a research program at my school, will that help? Or all the other stuff that's, for lack of a better term, intangible or subjective on the application program. How does that, quote-unquote, factor in the admission process when we're reviewing transfer applicants?
Yes, it helps. Do you want more?
Yes.
Yes.
No, we do a comprehensive review process here at USC. So we're reading everything. We're interested in all of those other things besides just your transcripts. I mean, we do need to be clear that if you're transferring into an engineering program, particularly ours, preparation and your ability to do the math and science and the courses related to your specific intended major here are the most important and parts of this process, and where we start and end every application review. However, we do care about the whole person. We care about the whole application. And so, yeah, I mean, I was being a little bit flip, but doing things like internships or research papers or unique experiences, both related to engineering and outside of engineering. All of these things are interesting. All of these things are helpful. They help us get to know you better as a person and get a better sense of what you're capable of and what you've accomplished and what you may be able to accomplish here.
And just kind of expanding on the idea of what we look at in the file review process, we do look at everything, and so that means I don't want anyone freaking out there thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not published or I'm not involved in a lab, it's over for me. We also know that some of you are working part-time, or you have family obligations. We pay attention to all that. That's the application is really a document that helps us understand what your context. And I think a lot of transfer students reach out to us indicating that they're in a unique situation. And what I would want every transfer student to know is that really you're all unique. Every transfer student is following a somewhat different path, and we recognize that, and we go through that as we review your file so that we can really understand the context of what you're doing. Preparation is obviously key. You still got to do well in the key courses that will prepare you for engineering, but we're interested in getting to know all of you, all aspects of you.
Cool. We have time for maybe one or two more questions, so I apologize if I said that would be the last one. And Christine, our buddy Brady Schmicking just jumped in here.
Hey, Brady.
We've talked to Brady a few times this last week or so, and Christine, I should tell you, he starts off his question with, oh, I'm a fan. He had a quick question on test scores from high school, and specifically the ACT, the SAT subject test, and AP scores. And so if someone's coming from high school and they've spent maybe a year or so at community college, how does all of that stuff factor in? Should they send those in? Do we care? Let's talk about the high school stuff.
Yeah, so for test scores like SAT and ACT, students who are going to have 30 units in progress by this coming spring. So basically, if you've been in college for a year, you don't need to submit a standardized test score like the SAT or ACT. So you're not required to do so. If you're just dying to submit it because you just love that SAT score and you want to make sure that we know about it, you're welcome to submit it. But it's not required as part of the admission process for most students, because you'll have 30 units complete or in progress by this spring. In terms of AP coursework, again, you're welcome to let us know if you've gotten certain scores on APs, but primarily what we're usually more interested in is your college level coursework. We do accept some AP credit to move you forward in course sequences here, but even if you got a 5 on AB calculus, our assumption is that you've taken Calc 2 and or maybe even Calc 3 since high school. So just keep moving along when it comes to courses and your AP credit. Matt, what else?
Well, I'd just like to add one other thing, because in general, those standardized tests really are part of the freshman admission process and not really part of the transfer admission process, which is why we don't require them.
Right.
The exception being international students and your TOEFL and your IELTS, and/or your IELTS. So the English testing for non-native English speakers is a required part of the application process for transfer students.
Even if you've taken the equivalent to USC's writing requirement, all international students must submit the TOEFL, the IELTS, or a PT exam. But yeah, you're still required, even if you've done the USC writing requirement, you still need to submit a standardized test score for that. And again, those can be submitted after the February 1st deadline, just as soon as possible.
So for all of our domestic students out there, I imagine you all fell into two camps when we started talking about the test scores and APs and stuff like that. Some of you thought, oh great, I have a better chance of getting admitted because I have really high scores, and another half thought, oh, I don't have good scores, so I have a lesser chance, and neither of you are right. So just realize that we're not really focused on those. If you're in college as a transfer student, we're focused on what you're doing in college. That's what's going to be important. Those tend to supersede those previous high school exams. So that's very, very important. I don't want anyone to think that they're at an advantage or a disadvantage because of something that happened in high school.
Exactly.
So that is going to wrap it up for us, but I want to leave a minute or two for both Christine and Matt to just give in some final bullet points to all of our transfer applicants on things that they need to remember as we go into this final push for the last week or so of applications for fall 2015 transfer applicants. Christine, what are some things that they need to remember?
Yeah, I think submit your application, Common App and USC Writing Supplement by February 1st. Then your next step after you've submitted those two pieces of information via commonapp.org is then you're going to go ahead and submit the supporting documents. For most of you, that means high school transcripts, official high school transcripts, official transcripts from every single college that you've attended, and then if you're an international student, be sure to submit an English exam score for us as well. So those are the key pieces. And then, we had a transfer student reach out to us today and said, I don't know what my next steps are. I haven't been asked to submit anything else since I submitted my application. There's a transfer application checklist on our website. You can look at that, and you don't have to wait for us to go through and ask you to submit your official transcripts. Go through that checklist now and do it ahead of time. And I think Matt had a great tip, which is you can submit an unofficial transcript to help us get started in the review of your application. So if you know it's going to take a while for the official to kind of move through, you can always shoot us an email with an unofficial. We can add to your file. We still need the official, but an unofficial can get us moving.
And then I would just add that we understand that cost is an important part of both deciding on potentially transferring and making this a transfer work over the long term. So I do strongly encourage everyone, regardless of your personal financial circumstances, to take a look at the financial aid website, engage that process. The worst thing that could happen is you could be ultra rich and not need any need-based financial aid. But even in that case, there's information about merit scholarships there as well. So I do strongly encourage everyone to start that process pretty much as soon as you've finished off with that initial application. And then my one other just blanket request is, this is we're a private institution. We understand that everybody has a story, and that there are lots of individual circumstances for students who are considering transferring into our engineering programs. So as we've said several times, if you have any questions, if anything's not clear, please don't hesitate. Reach out to us, send us that email, give us a call. We'll make sure that we address your individual circumstance.
And I also forgot to mention that on our website, the Viterbi, our blog Viterbi Notes, we have some great tips for transfer students. So if you haven't checked out viterbinotes.usc.edu.
Well, they're on it right now.
Oh, you are? Okay, fantastic.
Well, I'm sorry. Let's get the website off. Sorry, that was my fault. If you're watching the live chat right now, you're at Viterbi Notes right now. All you have to do is click up to the transfer link and read all the transfer posts that Christine's talking about.
Yeah, some great tips that we know a lot of students ask year after year, and we've just outlined the answers to all those questions.
Right, and then finally, the last thing that I wanted to talk about is the sites that we keep going back to, and what Christine really talked about with the transfer checklist is at viterbi.usc.edu/transfer. I can't stress it enough how many times I get on somebody calls me and asks me questions, and the best thing I can do is tell you to open up the website and walk you through it. So I'm going to do that right now. Open up the website and read it. Practically every one of your questions is up here. If you click on how to apply right here on the left side, this is the transfer application checklist that Christine was talking about. It tells you exactly everything that you need to do. We give you some tips on how to go through the common application. We talk about how we do not require the college report. We do not require letters of recommendation or an academic evaluator form. And it is not necessary to submit any of the additional forms that we've talked about. It's all right here. So most of your questions are all on our website. We talk about high school, we talk about your transcripts, and if you need to send anything in officially, here's the address that you send it into to the Office of Admission to make sure that it's sent directly into your file. Those are the important points. viterbi.usc.edu/transfer. You want to make sure that you're reading the application, that you are reading our website, that you go through it and get that submitted by February 1st. My recommendation, do not wait till February 1st to submit the application. At Murphy's Law, if something's going to go wrong, it definitely will go wrong.
And you're in the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah, and it's the Super Bowl, which we've got other things to do with the Hawks playing up against the Patriots. So go Hawks, whatever we can do. I know I'm probably going to catch flack for that from somebody across the country, but hey.
Well, at least they don't deflate their footballs.
We don't. Oh man,
we gotta fight off.
the last minutes. All right, so we've gone a few minutes over, but I just wanted to thank every one of you for tuning in. We've had a great chunk of you watching this whole time. We had over 100 different question submissions to this whole thing. We got to as many as we possibly can. Thank you so much for tuning in to Viterbi Live. Good luck with your transfer applications, and make sure you submit your application no later than February 1st. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Bye now.
Thank you.